What is up, guys? Welcome to the return of the Show-Stopping Wrestling Podcast. And today we are looking at our top 10 moments in the history of Wrestlemania. Now we are just days, moments away from the relaunch of Wrestlemania in front of a full crowd for the first time in 2 years. A show which is undoubtedly going to find some more incredible moments with the return of the Texas Rattlesnake, the induction of the Phenom The Undertaker. And if you are new around here, please do like and subscribe to us at ShowStopWrestle on Twitter. Kicking off our list at number 10 is one of the most iconic scenes in the history of the Showcase of the Immortals. Edge vs Mick Foley at WrestleMania 22 is regarded as one of the greatest hardcore matches in WWE history. It culminated in the famous scene of Edge spearing Mick Foley through a flaming table, with the pair writhing in pain on the floor. That image of Edge spearing Mick Foley through the middle rope, with Mick Foley flat on his back being engulfed in flames, is one of the most famous images of the last 20 years. The spot was so brutal that the story goes that Mick Foley's wife called Mick immediately after the match and inquired not how her husband was, but how Edge was, after he went face first into the flames. Mick Foley had never had a WrestleMania moment up until this point in his career, and Edge wanted to change that, and boy did he deserve it. This Sunday, Mick and Edge will be reliving this match for a documentary on the WWE Network, and I, for one, will be watching. Next up at our number 9 spot is an often forgotten special moment from WrestleMania 32, where the boyhood dream came true for one Zack Ryder. Zack managed to defeat Kevin Owens, Ziggler, Miz, Sami Zayn, Sin Cara and Stardust, but we'll forget about that one, to become the new Intercontinental Champion. Zack had been an internet darling for some years at this point, getting himself over huge via his YouTube show Long Island Ice Z. But Zack finally earned his gold here and managed to take a long-awaited photo with Scott Hall backstage at the event. He was recreating one he had taken decades earlier as a child when he got to hold Hall's IC belt. Although WWE did decide to take the belt off Zack the very next night, this remains one of our best feel-good moments in WrestleMania history. Next up on our list, taking our number 8 spot, is a moment from what is considered the greatest WWE pay-per-view of all time, WrestleMania 17. Now, the culmination to this all-time classic WrestleMania was the second in what would become a trilogy of matches between two of the biggest stars in the history of professional wrestling, The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. For years, we had all watched as Austin fought the system and his arch-nemesis, Mr. McMahon, to be the most loved anti-hero of all time. Now, WrestleMania X7 was when this all changed and Austin sided with Mr. McMahon. Something us wrestling fans never thought we'd see, and it turns out for good reason. This turn, while one of the most momentous moments in WrestleMania history, is regarded as one of the worst booking decisions of the era. Fans just did not want to boo Austin, and the turn ultimately failed to garner the reaction envisioned. Austin, JR and all of the like have since said that an audible should have been called on that night and stopped the turn. Nonetheless, Austin's turn at WrestleMania X7 culminated an incredible pay-per-view with a moment nobody ever saw coming. Following on from the turn nobody saw coming is number 7 on our list, the heist of the century. The main event of WrestleMania 31 saw Roman Reigns take on Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship, which was really expected to be the crowning moment for the heir apparent of WWE, Roman Reigns. Earlier in the evening, Seth Rollins had lost his match to Randy Orton in, well, incredible fashion. And later in the evening, Seth popped back up in the main event with his Money in the Bank briefcase in hand, making the fastest sprint down a ramp in human history. The crowd popped huge for Seth attacking both Brock and Roman before winning the WWE title in a shocking turn of events. The image of Seth Rollins stood on top of the WrestleMania stage swinging the WWE title around his head to close the show is one of modern WWE's most shocking and memorable moments. Talking of modern WWE WrestleMania moments, in at number 6 on our list is Kofi Mania. Kofi Kingston has been a loyal soldier for WWE for well over a decade, without ever having been placed in a main event picture whatsoever. After a series of injuries and creative changes, Kofi found himself in the unlikely and lucky position of being Daniel Bryan's competitor at WrestleMania 35. See, we were lucky to be inside of MetLife Stadium that evening, and boy, when Kofi got the 1-2-3 over Bryan, I have never heard a reaction like it. New York City came unglued for Kofi Mania in one of the most feel-good moments in the history of the granddaddy of them all. Fans in the building that night knew that Kofi had worked hard for a long time and deserved his place at the head of the WWE, and they reacted exactly as expected. Grown men around us were breaking down in tears and screaming at the top of their lungs when Kofi was raised on the shoulders of the New Day as the new WWE champion. At the midway point on our list, in at number 5, is the end of an era. Over the course of 4 WrestleManias, WWE told one of the greatest long-term stories in the history of the business between 3 of the all-time greats, Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, and Triple H. The culmination of this story, as long as we choose to forget the goddamn Saudi return ever happened, which I definitely choose to, was at WrestleMania 28 in Hell in a Cell, when The Undertaker and Triple H tore the ever-loving hell out of each other with Shawn Michaels as special guest referee. The match included one of the closest 3 counts we have all ever witnessed after a pedigree and sweet chin music combo on The Undertaker. The iconic moment, however, came once the match was over and the 3 legends took centre stage at the top of the WrestleMania ramp, holding each other up, which seemed oddly poetic and was a great send-off to the remnants of the Attitude Era. But speaking of the Attitude Era, comes another moment from WrestleMania X7, when Linda McMahon rose from her chair. That's in at our number 4 spot. Leading up to WrestleMania 17, Linda McMahon had suffered a mental breakdown and was left in a catatonic state, and her husband Vince, he took full advantage of that. He started a humiliating affair with Trish Stratus right under his wife's nose, who could do nothing but sit and watch. When Vince and Shane squared off in a street fight at the event, one of, if not the biggest pop of the event came when Linda McMahon simply rose from her chair and kicked Vince McMahon clean in the McMahon family jewels. Just sit back, listen to this reaction for just a woman standing up.
Wait a minute! Linda rose from her chair! Linda rose from her chair!
If that doesn't sum up why the Attitude Era truly was the golden age of wrestling, man, I don't know what else would. Moving on from that incredible pop is our number 3 spot, which is a moment which shocked the entire wrestling world and, whether we agree with it or not, is one of the most impactful moments in WrestleMania history. That's the end of The Undertaker's streak. The Undertaker entered WrestleMania 30 with a 21-0 win streak, having beaten some of the greatest wrestlers in the history of the business: Ric Flair, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Edge, Batista, the list just goes on. Early on in the match, Undertaker suffered a severe concussion and to this day is unable to recall any of what happened in the match. When Brock picked up the 3 count, the entire audience fell into a shocked silence, with this image from a man in the front row summing up basically what we were all thinking around the world. Pure, unadulterated shock. Like many people, I believed the streak should always have remained the perfect record, but all good things come to an end. It was just not quite what we expected on that night. Coming in second place on our top moments in WrestleMania history is a moment which is seen by many as the launching pad for the biggest star in the history of the wrestling business. At WrestleMania 13, Stone Cold Steve Austin stepped into the ring with the excellence of execution for one of the greatest matches in WrestleMania history, a pure masterclass of storytelling. Throughout this hard-fought battle, the 2 men brawled onto the floor and eventually culminated the match in the ring, where Bret got Austin in the sharpshooter. The decision was made that Austin would not give up in the submission hold, but instead would fight to the bitter end before passing out, showing pure defiance. The cherry on top of the cake to this moment came from Bret and Austin's willingness to break WWF policy and blade. Steve was pouring with blood as he screamed in agony in the sharpshooter, creating one of the most everlasting images in wrestling history and launching Stone Cold into the stratosphere, becoming the toughest SOB that WWE had ever seen. Before we move on to number 1, WrestleMania has so many iconic moments and it's impossible to list them all in just this top 10, and hell, everybody has different moments which mean something to them. Hogan slamming Andre at Mania 3 is a world-renowned image. Shawn Michaels whispering I love you to Ric Flair before he retired him resonated with people around the world. Tyson helping Austin was the launch of the Attitude Era. Bryan's Miracle on Bourbon Street at WrestleMania 30 gave us one of the greatest images of the modern era. Whatever your favourite moment is, please do comment down below and let us know. For us, however, the greatest moment in WrestleMania history came when we had Icon versus Icon at WrestleMania 18. In at number 1 on our list is the standoff we witnessed at WrestleMania 18 between the Great One The Rock and the Immortal One Hulk Hogan. The Sky Dome erupted in 2002 before these two men had even laid a single hand on one another. WWE expected Hogan to be the heel coming into the match, but Toronto had other plans for the Hulkster that evening. They cheered him like he had never been cheered before. And look, this is never going to top the poll of the greatest wrestling match of all time. But the moment these men created, just standing toe to toe in a ring without even laying a hand on each other, is one which wrestling fans will never forget. Two of the biggest stars in the history of the business standing toe to toe in front of 70,000 rabid fans is what WrestleMania is all about, and a moment which has never been duplicated in any era since. And that is it for Show-Stopping Wrestling's top 10 moments in the history of WrestleMania. Please do let us know down below your top moment or moments in WrestleMania history and what you're most looking forward to at WrestleMania 38 this weekend. If you are new around here, like and subscribe, follow us over on Twitter at ShowStopWrestle, and we'll be back very soon.